Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very well known professional, a brand strategy guru from Bangalore, India, Mr. Sattar Khan. Sattar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you. Sattar is a global brand strategy consultant and the creator of Strategygrams. He was earlier with McCann and J. Walter Thompson. So, Sattar, before we get into brand strategy, tell me about your own journey in brief and how has your background with McCann, JWT, and others influenced your current approach to brand strategy?
Well, the first 30 years of my life was really spent in those two advertising agencies, J. Walter Thompson and McCann, at a zigzag path. I was in client servicing, it got pulled into strategy, then client servicing strategy. So at higher levels of responsibility, I moved up zigzagging between those two, whether it was at J. Walter Thompson or at McCann World Group. At one stage, I was the head of strategy for J. Walter Thompson for Asia Pacific ex-Japan. And then I became worldwide director in charge of one of the top 10 clients. And that happened to be the first time that a 130-year-old agency had ever appointed somebody outside the West to run a top 10 client. And it just happened to be me. And then at McCann, I was again head of strategy increasingly for clients in the Asia Pacific region. And then I became the head of multinational clients, ex-Japan. So it's been back and forth.
Right.
I wish it had all been very well planned, but life is a mix of effort and, let's say, opportunity.
Correct. And as the famous line goes, life happens, right? So, Sattar, let's talk brand strategy. And since this audience is young, as I was explaining to you before we started recording, my questions may seem a little basic to you, but indulge me when I ask you my first question. Can you explain what defines a successful global brand strategy?
Actually, I think strategy depends on which perspective you look at it. But broadly, I would say in terms of what you are getting out of the strategy and then what your audience or your target is getting out of it. So in terms of what you are getting out of it, it would obviously be, are you getting sustainably significant margins? Are you building competitive advantage? Are you let's say, ready for a robust business model, either the current one or the one that's emerging. But what really interests me is really the other part of it, the impact on, let's say, clients or customers or consumers as they may be. And that's because without customers, you don't have a business, you just have a hobby. So I would say roughly you're looking at three dimensions. One is, am I significant in the context of the consumer? So that's the first S, if you like. The second S of the three S's that I've formulated, but anybody else could have done it slightly differently, is how salient are you? So you're significant, you're relevant, but do you really come to mind? And are you within the arm's reach of desire, as Coke once put it? So significant in mind and find. And the third one would be superiority. Superiority, both in terms of choice, but also in use. So there's the big choice when I decide to purchase a brand, and then I buy this, let's say, shirt, or your wife buys this dress, and then you say, I like it, but on this occasion, I'm not sure I'm going to wear it. Or on this occasion, I'm not sure I'm going to use this pen. I'm going to use the other one. So the relationship goes beyond the purchase to the use, because that's really when you connect and reconnect in terms of the relationship. So I would say, if I were to look at success, forgetting the obvious part of, are you making money? Do you have a good business model? Are you looking at tomorrow as well as today? I would say, do you really have these three things? Are you significant in the life of the customer?
Yeah.
Are you salient? And are you superior in terms of the alternatives that are available to the customer?
Well said. Well said. Great response. And given the fact that you have spent so much time in so many different parts of the world working with global brands, what are, in your view, some of the top challenges global brands face today, and how do some of your strategies address them?
Actually, all strategies have to be locally relevant.
Correct.
So whether you're a global brand or a local brand doesn't matter, because I am the customer. I'm not thinking about anything else, but how it's relevant to my preferences, my use cases, my price points that I'm comfortable with, and the communication that resonates with me. So everything goes back into, let's say, local relevance. Now, this does not mean, let's say, you localize the product. It could be like if you take a drill, the base of the drill would be universal, but then the drill bits would vary according to the task.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what you're doing. Now, what happens if you cannot vary the product at all? It could be something like Coca-Cola, which is age-old, and you have no ability to vary the product. Or it could even be a product that you have absolutely very little control of, if at all. Now, for example, I was working some years ago on the Australia Tourism Commission, ATC, on promoting Australia as a brand. Now, you, as an agency, don't have control over the hotels, the airlines, nothing of that kind. But you still have the job of attracting tourists to Australia.
Correct.
And nobody goes to Australia other than by choice. It's not on the way to anywhere else. You just have to go to Australia. And that, again, means how you connect with the customer or the potential customer in terms of the proposition. So, for instance, I remember the creative team working on the Tourism Commission account had produced a wonderful commercial, of a couple walking on the beach, and Australia has these great beaches, etc. And then when you test it in Asia and you say, what are these two guys doing alone on the beach? They're going to get mugged. The girl is going to get into some other kind of trouble, because the idea of the beach is chopati, it's like a mela, it's a fair. So where's everybody else? So what you do is you take that proposition, not necessarily entirely under your control, but make it relevant. Or I was working on, let's say, a petrol brand, Caltex. And the idea then was to promote the backcourt services, the shop at the back of the petrol pump. And again, you had this wonderful commercial where the guy comes in and hands the key over to the petrol attendant, and then you go to the shop and you buy all those other things which you didn't realize you don't have to go to 7-Eleven or some other place to go. And I remember testing it, and I was speaking to a colleague of mine in Johannesburg, and this large African-American says, "You ever been to Joburg, mate?" So I said, "No." He says, "Well," he had researched the commercial in South Africa, and he says, "Well, you hand over your keys, your car keys, and that's the last time you'll see your car." So again, making what you're offering relevant in a way that resonates is the crucial thing.
Very interesting. What a great response. Thank you. The other question that I wanted to get your perspective on is that, and maybe this is from an Indian perspective, every company wants to go global now.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking global brands. What are your thoughts on some of the common mistakes a lot of entrepreneurs make when attempting to go global?
I think it always goes back to those three things. And your ability to innovate, not just in what you produce, but the way you connect, the way you create value to those 3 points, so that you become significant in their context. Obviously, if you're looking at a category like food tends to be very cultural and local. And then some things like a smartphone would be global. Right? But within that spectrum, it always goes back to this: I am buying as an individual in my context. And I think that's the crux of it, because context creates behavior, and context not only creates choice as the result of the influences, but without that context, you have no meaning.
Right.
You know, I have a wonderful pair of slippers. I have a wonderful pair of sneakers, and I have a wonderful pair of dress shoes. But what becomes relevant to me depends on the context.
Right.
You change the context and you change my behavior, and hence the relevance of that product. So it always goes back to creating relevance, and that's where the role of innovation comes in. Because everything, I feel, is an interaction between form and functionality. You go back to music, for instance, right? Some of us may remember, unfortunately, the days of LP records. Then you went into cassettes, and then you went into
CDs.
those iTunes and CDs and iTunes and streaming and all that sort of stuff. And what happens is, not only has the form changed, but the functionality has also changed. Because functionality, which was trapped in form, is no longer trapped in form.
Right.
You have suddenly released it. And that is the crux, that not only are you evolving form, but you're therefore also releasing functionality which didn't exist earlier. And I think that is the key to making your product relevant, not just where you are, but where you want to go.
Very well said. What a great response. But now in today's world, Sattar, this whole thing of digital, social media, and now generative AI, how are these technologies beginning to influence global brand strategies?
I think I would say there are probably three key streams of thought that one would look at. First of all, you are no longer the main voice or the principal authority about your brand. In the old days of broadcast media, it's what you said that presented the imagery of what you want, your solution. But not only are consumers communicating with each other, and perhaps with more credibility than what you are saying, so buzz becomes more important than hype, but also you need to be more responsive to the customer. Earlier, if a customer wrote a letter, and that was a handwritten letter, maybe you wrote back, the customer complaint department wrote back when it was appropriately, let's say, suitable for them to do so. Today, if you're not responsive, that person is going to badmouth you on platforms where suddenly hundreds and perhaps thousands of people are going to say, don't go near this brand. So what has happened is that you are no longer connecting with the consumer in a solo space. There are other voices, and those voices are ones that you cannot control. They may be more credible than you are, and they certainly may be more ubiquitous, if not prevalent elsewhere. So I think that's one. The second thing is, I would say, is that the data that you have today, especially in digital media, if I have a book, let's say on Amazon, not only am I getting data about who's looking at it, how often, the speed of the data, but I can also target people when they're in the shopping aisle, as it were. So you're in the buying mode for X book, and guess what? My book is just like that. Or you're buying X, and my Y item is just like that. So you are able to target more precisely in the right moment for the right people.
Well said.
And the third thing, which I think is the ability, using the internet, to have 3D representation. In the old days, you had to book a hotel room through a travel agent or directly. Now you can see that whole room in 3D view.
Absolutely.
And what is more, it's not just what is out there. It is also what is in here. You can put your mobile phone and see what that kitchen appliance looks like in your kitchen. Or you can see what the spectacle frame looks like on your face. That completely changes the dynamic of choice. So all these three things have made it far more important to be very clear about the management of your brand strategy. Because no longer are you in that powerful position. And power has been diffused.
Correct. Very well said. One more question relating to brand strategy, and then I want to move to Strategygrams. What role does storytelling play? And storytelling has always been a big part of branding. But in today's environment with technology and all what you just spoke about, what role does storytelling play in building a brand's global identity?
What are we really doing? What we're really doing is orchestrating stimuli in order to create meaning, which then shapes perception. That's really the business we are in. We are not in the business of communication. We are in the business of persuasion to provide something that is helpful as a solution for the customer. So part of the stimuli that you're, let's say, getting across to the potential customer is the narrative within which you frame your offering. Now, you take a very famous brand like Starbucks. It is going through, let's say, a bit of transformation, or it's required to go through transformation. The narrative there was, look, there's the home, there's the office, and there is the third place. So after I finish my work, but before I go home, I meet with friends or meet with people, and then I have this cup of coffee, which there's a little drama in presentation, there are new flavors to it, and so forth. And this third place and the experience in the third place justifies me paying so many dollars for a cup of coffee. But suddenly somebody says, you know what? Let's have coffees being delivered. So this is the grab and go. Then there is the product that you have available in the supermarket, Starbucks coffee. So you're no longer selling the experience of place and creating the aura of the place experience around the product. So when I'm having this coffee in my office cubicle, and I'm saying, wait a minute, why am I paying so much for this coffee? Because the coffee is not really what was justifying the price. The experience was justifying the price.
Right.
So if you have lost the narrative for your proposition, then effectively you are creating, let's say, either dissonance or an opportunity for somebody else to come in with a narrative fill.
Amazing. Let's now talk about Strategygrams, Sattar. And you are the creator of Strategygrams. Can you explain the concept of Strategygrams and how it applies to brand strategy?
Yeah. Well, Strategygrams, for those of us who may not know, is come out as a book about 2 months ago. It's in hardback, available in India, and then as an ebook elsewhere on the world, on Amazon, and in a couple of places, print on demand, but in black and white there, whereas this is all color. How did Strategygrams come about? Perhaps like you, I am a reader. I read a lot. I certainly read a lot in the area of strategy. And over the years, I've read several thousands of books. And but what I found was that for many people, and that included me, but for many people, after you spend 2-3 years in the business and you go through this whole business book and you spend hours plowing through it, you may get one point, you might get one phrase, or you might get one portrayal. That is very poor ROI. So when people want to learn about strategy, the idea was, what's the big point here? Can you give it to me quickly? Can you give it to me not only quickly, but in a way that is relevant for me? So I can fill that meaning in that place. And why is that important? Because as a person who's worked in large multinationals and pitched clients across many countries, you find that there is a tradition of every agency being asked, can you give us 3 case histories of what you have done for some other client where the issue was analogous to mine?
Right.
And I tell you this, Ashutosh, regardless of which country you're in, which pitch you're in, which type of customer, within the first 5 to 7 minutes, the client will say, that's wonderful, but that's not my problem. My problem is slightly different.
Correct.
Or my category is unique.
Mm.
So you need a receptacle where the person can bring in his or her own issue, irrespective of which category is in, or what the issue is, or where the person is located.
Mm.
And then the third consideration was, I don't have time to go through all this blah, 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 yada, yada. Can I get it quickly?
Mm.
So the formulation of strategygrams, there are really three key principles.
Mm.
One is it must make an important, insightful point, or as you and I might say in Hindi, moti baat kya hai? What's the key point?
Mm.
The second thing is that you have to deliver it to me quickly. So I have chosen the billboard format.
Yeah.
Everything is like a billboard. 3 seconds, you get it. But sometimes the billboard gives you pause. What is this thing? Then you say, aha. And that aha is as important as the communication, because that's when it becomes mine, as opposed to you telling me. And the third thing was, because it is across people, it has to be one where the stimuli works across different categories and regions and cultures. So if you look at strategygrams, I might show you one or two.
Yeah, please.
Okay, here is one, right? This is a deer which is representative of your speed of change. The tiger represents the speed of change of the environment. Now, if one is faster than the other, you know what happens.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter where the deer is, where the tiger is. We all know what it means because they represent something else.
Correct.
Or here's another one.
Yeah.
Here is the product. Here is the meaning of the product. And the meaning is the buy. So the question really is, what is the meaning you're cultivating and signaling? So there are 170 of these. All of them are visuals. All of them one-off billboards. And they're structured into understand the context, develop your choices, and then make the changes.
Amazing. Amazing. So I have time for one more question.
Yeah.
How does your book aid in facilitating cross-functional team alignment for brand objectives?
Okay. Now, let's say there are 170 odd of these strategygrams.
Yeah.
What do you do? Let's say you've got 5 or 6 people in your team.
Yeah.
You say, for you, please pick the 3 to 5 of these strategygrams that you think represent the issue that you feel our brand is facing now. And then suddenly you'll realize that the mental narrative that you had is not necessarily the mental narrative they had. So this is stimuli for getting the thinking out from the limited cognitive space that we all have, out there visually. So then you can see, okay, that's the difference. You can compare, you can connect, and then you can go on to change. So what Strategygrams does is give you stimuli for thinking visually, expressing visually, and then making those changes with the normal processes of strategic thinking, comparing, connecting, componentizing, and so forth.
Amazing. And on that note, Sattar, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I think it was incredible to get the 3 S's for brand strategy, which was how significant are you, how salient are you, and how superior are you? And the 3 S's lead to the 4th S, which, as you said, is success. So the 5 S's: strategy, significant, salient, superior, and success.
And don't forget the 6th one,
which is
Sattar.
And from Sattar, absolutely. 6 S's. So 6 S's of strategy. Thank you. And also maybe listed in Strategygrams. So that's the 7th one. But I want to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Mr. Sattar Khan's book, Strategygrams. I'm going to order a copy soon after our conversation.
Oh, I'll mail it to you. Yeah.
No. Thank you so much also for speaking to me about some amazing stories of, which you mentioned, Australian tourism or Caltex. I think we covered a lot of ground. I wish I had endless time to keep talking and, diving much, much more deep into the kind of knowledge you have on brand strategy. But thank you for speaking to me, and all the very best to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Real pleasure. And I look forward to connecting with you beyond. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast.
a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.